Welcome to the Art and Science of Complex Sales, proudly presented by Membrane. This podcast is your gateway to mastering the craft of modern selling. If you're passionate about growth, impact, and unlocking full potential in sales and revenue, you're in the right place. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And now let's get started with today's guest.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Today we are on with Michael Koory. Michael is CEO of BlueSalesFly. He's also author of The Guide Selling System, a customer-centric map for fixing broken sales. Today we're talking about his concept of revenue drift, why that's happened in a lot of organizations, specifically in manufacturing, and how putting together a sales operating system, strong processes, and a framework for leading, serving, and helping our customers grow really is a solution to combating revenue drift. Let's get started with Mike Koory. And we are live with Mr. Michael Koory. How the heck you doing, Mike?
Good. I'm doing well. Good afternoon. Glad to be back.
Good afternoon, good morning, good night. Whenever people are listening, it's glad to have you back, man. What you been up to lately?
Combating all of the issues that face sales leaders and people with B2B sales teams, which is fun.
Yeah, you're out there. I mean, I know you're out there day on day. You're helping sales leaders build their organizations. You came upon this. Let's just dive right in because you come upon a pretty cool thing that you're calling revenue drift and what happens to teams. Do you mind diving into that a little bit?
No, not at all. Happy to. And I started noticing a trend in what's happening, especially in some of in the more complex sales, especially in manufacturing, where I'm doing a lot of work right now. Is through the process, revenue can just drift out, and it really falls back into this need that I'm seeing and using with CEOs, is that you need to look at your revenue system with the same level of governance that you would with any of your other operations. And so combating revenue drift is really about establishing the level of governance in how your team is going to market, how they're interacting with the customers, what sort of conversations they're having. And then internally as well, leadership needs to have those same level of frank, defined discussions to combat drift. And what drift looks like is that deal that is growing moss on it because it's going to close next quarter, it's going to close next quarter, it's going to close next quarter, or deals that get right up into that final stage and all of a sudden they ghost out, or well, we thought the margin was here, why is it down here? And all of those are signs of improper discussions, either internally with like an engineering or the operations team, or externally truly understanding what it is that the customer is trying to do. All of those fall into this category of drift, and it's really eating away a lot of the revenue that companies should otherwise be realizing.
As you're working with teams and sales leaders and salespeople, how many deals, like what is the percentage of drift in deals that you feel is actually because of the sales approach itself versus what's actually going on with the customer? Like, so that makes sense.
Yeah. We're responsible for the revenue. So I put a lot of it on us, as the revenue team. Like, there are certainly issues that arise with the customer that, if you're in manufacturing, for instance, what happens a lot of times is if you're fabricating a certain part that's going to go to your customer, and that part is something that they're still trying to sell, or that project is still something they're trying to sell, and they fail at selling that, of course, then you're going to lose that potential revenue. But to me, that goes into, do you have a flag in your process that is identifying, hey, is this existing production, or is this a future project that our client is trying to win? Because we should gate those differently with the amount of resources that we're allocating to that customer. So I think we still maintain that level of responsibility to ask those questions, and perhaps even ask them of the customer. Well, how is it that your team is going about selling this project? What are the key markers that you're looking for from the customer? What problems is your customer trying to solve for? There's so much value that the sales team can provide when we show up with the right posture to really help them uncover what are the real issues, what are the barriers that might be in place to prevent this project from moving forward. So I think there's an element in all of the deals, and it really goes into, are the sales leaders equipping their teams to ask the right questions, to show up in the right manner, and have we built the process with the right gating so that we have a real clear understanding of where this deal and opportunity really sits.
Well, one of the interesting things you're talking about, and we're talking about revenue drift. So deals pushing, higher discounting, forecasts off. Those are all kind of symptoms of things that happen. One of the things you mentioned there is essentially, there's a couple ways to think about qualification, but essentially, how do we, as a system, effectively qualify in and qualify out deals at the beginning, but also then how do I qualify how I'm going to work these deals in each stage over time,
right.
And the level of effort and impact that we need, and how do we accurately judge that?
Exactly. Yeah. And that goes to, so if we stay on that same example, if the client needs a price for a certain item, and are we going to spend a ton of engineering time and resources to get to the exact price, or are they at a point that they just need a ballpark because they're trying to figure out if this thing is sellable? I've seen customers that have spent hours and hours of engineering resources pricing out something that really could have been done more back of the napkin if you're having if you've built that level of trust with your customer. So you're having a real, business level conversation about where they're at in the process of selling it. And those activities are key for us to help, the internal team and our customers navigate, so that we, know that when it comes time to pipeline, and, ABC Corp is talked about, it's like, well, here's where it's at. They're trying to sell this customer, our pricing is at this level, and do we have, the step built in to refine that a little further once that whole project gains more clarity. Because otherwise, your forecast it could be massively overinflated, and you could be leaking tons of internal resources, trying to prop up something that just isn't necessary at that time.
Yeah, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due here to a woman, Liz Hyman. She's a good friend of mine. We did a podcast and some presentations in the past and worked together, but she says this, and I think it's what we're getting to, which is why do manufacturing companies will accept, top tier manufacturing companies accept less than a 0.5% defect rate in end product, but they will accept a 25 to 30% and 35% variance in their forecast as just a standard way of doing business. And you are working to eliminate that. You
Absolutely.
can't completely eliminate it, but increase the probabilities of hitting forecasts that actually can be hit.
Yeah, they will obsess over quality metrics, and brag, rightfully so, about quality metrics. And then when the pipeline discussion comes, 20 to 30% swings are deemed acceptable. And it doesn't have to be that way, nor should it be that way. Now, people are not the same as machines. We're irrational. We're irascible, irrational and irascible.
Speak for yourself.
Often unpredictable. But again, I want the manufacturing companies that I work with to realize there's a value that they're providing when they're providing a price. There's a value that goes beyond just the aspect of the product that they're delivering. And that level of expertise should be part of baked into the conversations and the sales process that they're taking to their customer. And thinking about those things and having discussions around those elements, I think it gets to exactly the stuff that Liz is talking about. And I think the work that she's done is fabulous. And I'd be in total agreement with her, because you can narrow those gaps, and we should treat the revenue function with the same level of precision and governance that the rest of the organization has to adhere to.
Why it seems so unnatural and different that they would treat sales as, like, so many companies, they just treat it as a black box. But it seems completely irrational that they do so, especially in that regard. Why is that? Like, and I would say there's so many. I've talked to so many, specifically in manufacturing and distribution, and those that it's like, well, just the way we always done it. It's just, salespeople are out there, and the engineers are all like, I'm not in sales, I'm not going to touch it. Why is it? Why is it still pervasive?
I think there's a couple of reasons. I think number one, there's a massive amount of social programming that we've all been through, regardless of age, about what a salesperson is. If you look at movies, if you read books, TV shows, can you name the last one where the salesperson was portrayed as like the hero, the great person? Like they're always kind of the foil, or they're always kind of the goofy person. And you look at a lot of these manufacturing companies, a lot of the ones that I'm working with in the, $10 to $70 million range, they may have had one or two really good salespeople that they just, were fortunate to get, that brought in all of this business, and everything in the company is built around the way this person brought in the business. Then all of a sudden they decide to retire. They have no idea how they found customers. They have no idea what their qualification process was. There's no formalized process for working these deals. It was just like, well, Paul brought it in, and so Paul was always there. So Paul always figured it out. And now all of a sudden they're gone. They have no idea where to start.
Callahan Auto Parts.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Tommy Boy?
Yeah.
It is Tommy Boy. It's the Tommy Boy effect.
And I think, salespeople, we tend to rebel against process because we think it's going to be restrictive, and, we're always looking over my shoulder. And the real fact of it is it actually frees you. It's way more freeing than it is constricting, because now the steps that you have to get the customer to go through to get to their desired destination, to get to the outcome they want, all the while protecting the company. It'd be like, if you like football, if I'm trained in the, spread offense and you are trained in something else, how are we ever going to work on the same team? We're not going to know the right schemes. We're not going to know what I'm supposed to do in this situation. So then how do you, as a sales leader, how do you ever coach to it? Which is probably one of the reasons why there's so little, coaching out there, which, you have that great paper that Membrane has just released. If you don't have a process-driven approach to how you go to market, then you're never going to be able to scale as a team, because you can't train skills, you can't train moments, you can't train what the conversation needs to have, the conversation that needs to happen at this stage of the process. You're lost. And I think just because of all the programming that we've had, people just think, well, you're either a born salesperson or you're not. It's not just a dark box. They think it's a dark art of some sort, that you just become this, master of persuasion, which I don't think it's that at all.
We did, yeah, you're talking about that paper we recently did, and we'll link that in the episode, but I did point out that I think it was 97% of, we did two things. Number one, we surveyed sales experts around the world, and these are people like yourself that are diving in and analyzing and seeing what's going on in all types of organizations. I think we had something like 12,000 career engagements as a part of that subset sample size. So we got a lot of good information. And the other is we did this meta-analysis of the literature and market. Sorry. But in our analysis, we found that 97% of the people we actually surveyed thought that a sales framework, a process and methodology combination is more important now than it was even 5 years ago. And some of the reasons they gave were pretty fascinating. One, because of the complex decisions that are going on in market, you need to be able to engage your organization more effectively. And they need to know where you are in the context of that sale very easily and quickly. The other was AI. So to be able to engage AI in those processes, you need to be able to give the AI monster context. Where am I? What do I want to do? And then that shared language. So if we're going to build trust, we need to drive shared language. So that was all constant feedback, and it is very different than a lot of times what I do see in market is, you have the 4 hero reps or the 2 hero reps that bring in a lot, and they have their black box and their list of contacts. And then they have, anytime you try and bring on the next superstar rep, they're going to fail because they don't collaborate. And it's shifting. We're shifting to what we need into a full-on sales operating system that can be understood and coached to. Back to your point, like how do you coach an offense if you don't know the core formations? It's right. Impossible, So what are your thoughts on that idea? Like in terms of an intrinsic sales operating system, what are the components of that in your head?
Oh, that's a great question. And I would totally concur with all those statements that you just said. I would say that it needs to actually even be a revenue operating system. I think that, sales has the ultimate responsibility because we have to go face to face with the customer and take the yes or no or walk away, which should always be an opportunity as well. But even pushing further out, it has to go into the entire way that we start engaging the customer. And it needs to be, I think, a complete revenue operating system. And if there's, a traditional marketing, there has to be a real clean, clearly defined path for the customer, not just, sales versus marketing, but what is that customer journey going to truly look like? And so when it gets into our hands, we're responsible for that first level of qualification and that first level of, is there something there? And what does that look like? And how is that defined? And disqualification is almost more important than qualification. What are you going to say no to? Because salespeople often say yes to everything and try and make it fit because we're, naturally, most of the people that get into it are naturally kind of wired for growth. So once they pass that first gate, then what are the gates that you have to go through? When does resources come in, internal resources? When do you truly have an understanding of what the customer is trying to solve? And when do you truly have the trust to start talking about what are the implications of the problems if they don't solve it? And there needs to be criteria defined there all the way up to then how and when and who makes all of the decisions. And then if we stay on manufacturing, the final part really has to be how do we have an effective, clean handoff to the operations side that's going to have to then execute on this because and we own the relationship all the way up to that point. So we have to make sure that that's a real clean handoff and real clean understanding, so that in the end the customer wins and we continue to win. So I think those are some of the key parts, and that's a very simplified first approach, but we have to think about that journey for our resources, our time, our energy, and then are we seeing back from the customer the things that we need to see to know that they are truly engaged, and having ways to measure that, having ways to check the box, but more than check the box, know that they're really, that we're really there. That requires a system approach. And then I'd love to, at the end of that, I'd love to put in, and what I ask my clients to put in is some sort of Deming cycle, Edward Deming, to, plan, do, study, act at the end of your call. My intention was to do this. Did I do it? Yes or no? What happened? Do I need to make any adjustments? What's the next plan? Like those same level of quality criteria that go into manufacturing, we can use in what we do, so that we're constantly getting smarter, and we're constantly getting better, and we're constantly refining it.
So what if the client doesn't want to walk through your gates, right? So we put a lot of time and effort into the sales operating system and this process, and how it'll, in disqualification, right? But also then, helping them move forward. But what if their buying process is just not your gates? What if it's completely different?
Well, it's, we're always dealing with people, and I tell my clients, I build a linear process, but rarely do they go linearly. You move back and forth. So, if they don't want to get into, let's say in my process, there's a point where you have to talk about the impact of them staying or going. If they don't want to talk about that, then that's a signal to me that I don't really have their trust. And so I either have to do something to gain trust, or maybe they just are at the point that they need to be qualified out because they're just not ready to talk about it. And that does sometimes happen. Ideally, your sales process matches, how they're going to make decisions. And those, all we're ever able to get from our clients are signals of where they're at. And so if we're feeling a lot of resistance, there's a reason there. And that then, if it's worthwhile, means we have to park there and go a little deeper, or walk away and have those, have those gates built in, and understand, hey, Paul, so I understand you don't want to talk about this, right now. Is there something else that we need to discuss, or is there something that I missed, or is it just time for us to part ways as friends? Like, we need to be able to have those frank, level conversations, and leadership needs to coach to that. When those moments occur, deal with them, because often we just gloss over them and, hope and pray that someday that'll pop back up.
Well, in your career and in your coaching, not trying to make this a leading question, but I don't know any other way to ask it, quite frankly. So in your career and in your coaching, like, is it more effective? Like, have you seen it be more effective to disqualify and walk away and have that frank conversation? Or is it more effective for a sales rep to hold on and try and do whatever it takes to get a deal? So it's two different approaches. Most people hold on and try to do whatever it takes. But in your experience and how you coach, what have you seen?
If you have a clearly defined process and you have clear qualification, disqualification, that makes the decision easier. But there is always gray area. And I've made both mistakes. My coach was telling me this morning, there's a deal that's in my pipeline that I probably should put a stake in, but it keeps surfacing back up for various reasons. I do strongly coach that, like, if it's not a good fit, don't try and force the fit, because it's going to come back and bite you. Not all, I tell them not all clients, not all potential clients get to become real clients, because you have to gear towards that fit. And that's probably one of the hardest questions, because it's like, well, we could do this and we could do this and we could do this and make it work. And maybe that's the right decision. That could also be a terrible decision. You could do all those things and end up losing money. I think that's the part where, consistent coaching, consistent deal review, consistent, real pipeline reviews help surface that stuff sooner, so that when it comes time for that really hard decision, you're able to make it, and make it with confidence that if I say, Paul, I think we need to kill this deal, and you then, as my leader, walk me through the criteria that, is required to kill the deal, and you're like, yeah, I agree, then we need to be comfortable that that's what we're doing going forward, and then communicate to the customer, look, we're just not the right fit right now because of A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. Now, what is funny is when in my experience, and when I've coached people to do that, that's when it sometimes gets real for the customer. Like, well, wait, we didn't really mean that. And well, like, you'd really walk away? It's like, well, yeah, because, we thought you wanted to do this, and now you're saying you want to do this. Where's what I miss? Sometimes the walk away is probably the best tool that you have to figure out what's real.
Yeah. And I'm the way you answered, I'm very, again, I wasn't trying to lead you to that answer, but I'm very glad you did, because having that set criteria, this is where I think people miss the power of a sales process. Having a set criteria and set gates, and the ability to qualify well, disqualify well, gives you the opportunity then to have a baseline from which you can have strong coaching discussions. And help people make decisions and understand and gain trust on those decisions. And I've done the same thing both ways, right? If you have that good sales operating system in place, you can have those discussions in a high trust environment with your rep, and you can both agree and move on, right? When you don't, it becomes those, and not having those criteria outlined for both yourself and your rep, and quite frankly, the customer, it starts to give you this gray area where the enemy comes in. It starts to just attack in that area, and you start to decrease trust internally as well as externally. Now, that's not to say that those rules are hard and fast and have to happen every single time, but it is say that you have a core set of principles and an operating system to be able to make decisions on consistently over time, and then modify your decisions as the data shows you should.
Exactly.
And so many people really miss that. And one of the things I appreciate about your process is kind of this topo map that you put together, because I always think about a sales operating system and a process can help us really understand where we are collectively, right? One of the hardest thing that sales and sales marketing and customer success do is just be able to put a pin in the location we are and the circumstances that sit around that, and to be able to communicate that effectively to both the client and understand it internally. So tell me a little about your topo map and your guide processes that you work on, because that really tries to force us to pinpoint the is map, not just force everybody through the same journey, but pinpoint the is map effectively so we can make effective decisions moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so that was born out of humans without a map or without some sort of navigation. When we're lost, we walk in circles. And science has studied it numerous ways to try and figure out why. They don't know why, we just do. And if you find somebody that's lost hikers are usually less than a mile away from where they needed to be. And when they retrace their steps, they're walking in circles. So we have to name a destination. And, guides use topo maps, and the acronym for topo is threats, obstacles, problems, and opportunities. So I take the teams through identifying what are those, what are the threats to your client's business, what are the greatest threats that they might be facing, what are the obstacles that are preventing them from achieving what they want to achieve, what are the problems that they're facing internally or externally that they need to overcome, and then if they solve those first three, what are the opportunities if they were able to look at it. And I use that as a process to get the sales team to be thinking in terms of the customer's world, not their world. Because then once we have then we bake that into the areas of strategic value and how they're going to be asking questions of the customer, so that when we then have a sales process, we know, there's a specific criteria that allows you to move from the understand phase in the guide process to the impact stage. And that's, a mutual understanding and a transfer of trust. Like, have you earned the right to be able to then call out the problems and the implications and have that discussion? Because, sales has always been trained to search for pain, and pain certainly is it's a signal for you, but I don't think it converts the same way as it used to, because, who has just one pain anymore? People have dozens of them. So you really have to, and take that stat, which, came out years ago, that 67% of all deals started by salespeople died to no decision. Status quo is the reigning champ. Well, I can't really move you from status quo until we both have a solid mutual understanding of what your current status quo is. And what happens is when you have that level of discussion, you build a lot of trust, because you're not just poking at a bunch of pains. Because now once you have them, okay, it sounds like you're here, but you said you wanted to go over here. And now this becomes a map. There's going to always be movement from the organization on where they are to where they ultimately want to be. Once I have that base level of mutual understanding, now we can, and that trust, we can now talk freely about, okay, so what if you stay? What is that going to cost you? What's it going to cost you career-wise? What's it going to cost you company-wise? What's it going to cost you revenue-wise? Like, there is a cost to the status quo if there is another destination that has been identified. If that destination hasn't been identified, or that real threat, obstacle, or problem or opportunity hasn't been identified, then how are they ever going to know that there's a gap that they have to overcome, or there's movement that has to take place? Because then you can't quantify the cost. So I like to use those visuals because it helps them realize, oh yeah, I am here and I'm not where I said I want to be, because that becomes the whole crux of what's the motivating factor behind all this.
Well, let's I'm going to dive there for 1 second, and this will be our final dive, but the way you're discussing this points out to me something that I think that so many people miss, and I want everybody to embrace, which is a sales. So we think of the whole sales operating system, but the process and methodology within it should never be constructed in a way, at least this is my opinion, that forces a sales rep to, this is what you must do, right? You must do these 6 actions, or read this thing, or deliver them this piece of information, and this is how you have to do it. I think a great sales process and methodology understands the information that we need to have together collectively, and allows a sales rep to then operate more effectively as a leader within that situation by understanding that information, right? To recommend the right plays that we can be running, have a collection of plays that we can be running based on the information on how we can then facilitate a strong decision. But I think a lot of people, when they hear this idea of sales operating system, sales framework, sales process, sales methodology, they go back to like, I need to do 3 things. I have to teach, tailor, take control, or it's just BANT. That's all I got to do. It's just these 4 things. And I have to ask this question at this specific time. But I think that misses the power of a strong operating system and methodology. I think it's empowering salespeople to lead more effectively within the context of what's actually happening with the customer. I guess, how does Guide fit into that and the topo maps and those type of things?
Well, and I would totally agree with you.
You're allowed to disagree.
Well, you got to say something that I'm not going to like. You haven't said anything wrong yet that I can find.
Dang it.
Here's one of the big problems I saw. So when developing Guide, I looked at what I did right and did wrong, and I stubbed my toe and bumped my head many a times. One of the biggest issues I saw, and this came out in a variety of different assessment companies too, that the salespeople, when they have that pressure to sell you something, get into certain behaviors that allow us to miss all kinds of cues that we should see along the way. And, I have to go for budget now, or I have to get to the decision maker, or I have to go around this person. I have to. And I saw that what our role really is helping the customer identify and navigate their problems. So that's where the idea of the Guide persona came out of. It's the customer's the hero. I'm just trying to figure out if I'm the right one to get them to where they want to go. And if I take away that pressure of having to sell you something, then I'm better equipped. In the example that we were talking on our first dive or second dive, or whichever dive was, about being able to walk away. It's like, hey, Paul, it sounds like you want to go here. I'm really good at taking you here. It looks like I'm not the right fit. You should talk to, somebody else. So how we show up and it sounds ridiculously simple, but how we show up and what our intentions are really make that conversation flow. And it's really about having the right conversation with the customer to figure out do they really want to go there? Is that really the issue that they is it number 1 on their to-do list, or is it number 17? So simply having you show up with the right attitude, and then having the methodology match that attitude, and then put that into a process that is simple and repeatable, but can be built out as customized as you need. That's how the whole Guide framework came up. So you can show up as a guide, you're following the same methodology, and it's all built into the process that you're going to follow. So you can have better conversations and not feel like I got to, frameworks then can become tools. So, hey, we got this tool. Can we have a conversation about this to see if it helps you get clarity on what you're facing? Because we should show up with way more knowledge about what our customers, the business around the product or service that we are representing. We should know a lot about how that applies to the customer's business, because that's where the gold is. Like, that's where you can say, hey, you said you wanted to buy 3 pallets of this, but I saw your doc. What if we actually just, had the shipment every Monday for the next 3 weeks? Or, that's a really simple example, but those are the things. And I've had clients tell me, like, yeah, we won the deal because we saw that we could deliver on this day versus the other day, because we took the time to ask them about how they move material through their business. It's really about how we can show up in the manner that is going to be most effective use of our time and the client's time. And I saw that taking the whole friction of I have to do this to Paul, and instead of doing this to Paul, I get to do this with Paul, and like doing it to them versus with them is it's a simple shift, but it opens up much better conversations.
Yeah. And I think it's the heart of what a sales process and methodology, and ultimately a full-on, you can build a full-on operating system around that, truly is, right? And it's the antithesis of what most people see it as, which is I must check 7 boxes. I must do this. My win rate increases by 15% for this. It's the great ones are built from how do we effectively walk that journey with a customer and lead and serve in a good way. Hey, Mike, how do people find you if they want to find you online?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Michael Koory. That's 2 O's, 1 R, and a Y, and starts with a K. or they can email me at mike@bluesalesfly.com, and be happy to chat and see if there's an opportunity to help.
All right. Any final words for this amazing episode?
Yeah, I think revenue drift is prevalent, and for the listeners, if you don't have a sales process, start there. And if you don't know where to start, there's plenty of opportunities. They could always call me. But if you start at your customer and work backwards, and look at that, and then lead with where your value is, you can, that alone will help start you on the right path to finding revenue and improving those conversations.
Awesome. And I do for anybody out there, highly recommend working with Mike. He's got a great mind for this, and can dive in and help you rip apart what you're doing and improve it and codify it. I also highly recommend work with somebody on that. It's one thing, somebody that has the mind for that, and has the mind for kind of understanding what's going on, and because it's the small tweaks, and it's that to make big differences. And it's having the courage to stick by something that you're developing, even if it's not working perfect at first, but having that courage to work it through, and the foundational aspect that, okay, if we set up this process, if we set up this system, we can commit and we can learn and we can grow. Not everybody will be comfortable when we start, but it's not about comfort.
Right.
It just really isn't. It's about how we get better, and how we get better is never about comfort. Cool. Well, hey, that's my final words for the episode. Mike, thank you so much for being on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me again. Always a pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. Well, everybody, make sure you're connecting with Mike. Check out his website. Check him out on LinkedIn. He's got some great posts that he makes. I love the Jeep thoughts of Mike and his Jeep, giving us some sales tips and tricks, and how we operate in this manner. You are still putting those out. I want to make sure.
I am.
Okay.
I have some new ones coming out. So the Jeep thoughts will be coming back.
All right. Well, check Mike out on LinkedIn and for Jeep Thoughts. And as always, everybody, thank you so much. Make sure you're doing all the things: like, subscribe, share. Tell us how great or how bad we are. Just reach out at any given time. And as always, keep shining bright. Have an absolutely amazing day. Talk to you soon.